Hey everyone, welcome back to my annual Games I Beat video, this time for the 2021 edition. This video goes over the all of the games that I beat during the course of the 2021 year. And it was actually a fairly productive year with 45 games on my list, which manages to tie my second best production from 2014, in which I also beat 45 games. So not even close to what was last year with 57 games. You know, that was a pandemic year, so more time working from home and all that. But 45 games, I'm pretty pleased with the games I beat. Of course, there's a good number of shorter indie games in there, but at the same time, there was a couple of longer games that I also managed to beat, such as RPGs and whatnot. But without further ado, let's just get started with the list. The first game I beat was Wolflame through PC via the Steam platform. This is a classic vertical shmup in the vein of the early Raiden games. It's a budget game. If you can get it for sale, it's a very solid, classic style shmup that kind of resembles the shmups from the 90s. So nothing stands out too much about this game, but it's a fairly solid shmup that's available on Steam for cheap, when it's on sale. So Wolflame is the first game I beat in 2021. At number 2, we have Path of Giants, another Steam game that I got through a bundle. This one took me around 5 hours to beat, and this is a casual, relaxing indie puzzle game where you have to control these characters that are climbing or going through different environments in a snowy mountain. The puzzles are pretty clever. I had a lot of fun playing this, and I'm glad I gave it a shot. It was one of those games that just caught my attention, decided to give it a shot, and I was pleasantly surprised at how fun it was for being an indie game. So Path of Giants for Steam at number 2. Number 3, we have an indie game, free indie game on Steam, Interstate Drifter 1999. So I highly recommend this game. It doesn't take too long. It's a free game. The sequel, however, it's not free. So this is kind of like a demo of sorts, if you will. It's a free isometric old school drift racer game that has some open world components and at the same time racing and whatnot. But this is a very solid indie title. I highly recommend it, and again, it's free to try. So you don't lose anything. It's a very fun Steam game, indie isometric game with an old school vibe. Next up, we have Paradise Killer, a game that I did an impressions video recently, and that tells you how much of a queue I have for my impressions videos. But this is a game that I beat earlier in the year, and then I revisited recently to do my impressions video. But Paradise Killer, it's a fantastic game. It was released in 2020, and it's another Steam game that it's also available on the Switch. But it was a very fun detective game that has a lot of inspiration from Suda 51. From an artistic and sound point of view, you can see the influences from Suda 51 and the Grasshopper manufacturer. But a very interesting detective game that's open world, first person. So if you guys enjoy solving mysteries and whatnot, this is a very quirky yet interesting game that's available out there. Next up we have Frog Detective 1 and Frog Detective 2. Those are the next two games. These are indie very short puzzle crime solving games that have a unique, I guess, humor to them. There's almost like a cult following for these two games, and in fact, I think Game Pass will feature these games soon. I think I saw a blog announcement. For me personally, I didn't care too much, but I can recommend this if for maybe younger gamers that are getting into like kind of like the first person adventure and puzzle solving games. This is a good one. The humor didn't do a whole lot for me, but again, there's a cult following for these games that swear by them. Both of them are fairly short, so I beat these two games earlier in the year. Next up, I have Shantae Risky's Revenge, which is a platformer slash Metroidvania of the Shantae series. I guess this is kind of like the second game that was ever released by Way Forward, and it's a very solid Metroidvania game featuring Shantae. It's a kind of also has some sort of cult following, being a very solid Metroidvania game, and I'm looking forward to playing the other games in the series now that I completed this one. It took me around 7 hours to complete, so not very long, and the quality is there with the Metroidvania components. So next up we have Loop Loop DX, which is also, I played this on Steam as well. This is a free indie shmup bullet hell game that highly recommended. I mean, the game may look like a flash game, but trust me, this game has a very interesting mechanic where your bullets can go off the screen and back into the screen. Some interesting mechanics. The controls are pretty tight, and again, don't let the art direction and the simplistic graphics draw you away. This is actually a very fun free game on Steam, so highly recommended if you guys are into kind of like shooter games. Then up next we have Donkey Kong Country 2 Diddy's Conquest for the SNES via the Nintendo Switch online service. This is a childhood favorite of mine, one of the best platformers for the Super Nintendo Entertainment System. What can I say that hasn't been said about this game? It's one of those classic platformers, developed by Rare that it's just a classic at this point, and it's a must play if you guys are into side-scrolling platformers. Now, I think I'm up to number 9 at this point. We have XCOM Chimera Squad for Steam. This is one of the longer games that I played during the year. I think I put over 35 hours, and it's a very enjoyable game. If you guys are into the XCOM games, this is a little bit of a simplified XCOM game. It's a little bit of a spin-off. It's not like a mainline XCOM game, so that's something that I actually liked it. In fact, the game has fixed characters, and yeah, I have an impressions video if you guys want to check it out, but it was a very pleasant surprise to the point that it was among my top games of 2020. Had a lot of fun with XCOM Chimera Squad. Up next, we have Astro's Playroom for the PlayStation 5. This was a pack-in title with the PlayStation 5, and the first PS5 game that I beat and completed. Nothing too surprising because the game is short. I think it took me 3 hours, but overall this was one of my favorite 2020 releases. Even though it's a short game, I think this game makes perfect use of the DualSense controller and its capabilities. The rumble feature in this game is just out of this world. It truly gives the next gen definition of how hardware can help improve the experience. And through the PS5 controller, this game just becomes something else. It's a very solid 3D platformer, and when you add the rumble features of the PS5 controller, this game just goes to the next level. So highly recommended if you guys have a PS5. It comes bundled with the system. Number 11, we have Immortals Phoenix Rising. I played this via Stadia, and it took me around 40 hours to complete the game. And this was among my top 3 games of 2020. Very great open world game. Reminded me of Breath of the Wild, obviously, but with some Assassin's Creed components thrown in there. In fact, I think the developers also worked on Assassin's Creed Odyssey, which is another fantastic open world adventure game. So Immortals Phoenix Rising, I have an impressions video. It was one of my favorite games, and yeah, definitely recommend this if you guys enjoyed Breath of the Wild, for example. There's a lot of interesting puzzles and interesting, I guess, mythology elements added to the game that made it really enjoyable. Next one is a short one, Final Fight on the PS4. This was part of the Capcom Beat 'em Up bundle. And at the same time, right after I beat Final Fight, I also beat Battle Circuit, also from the Capcom Beat 'em Up bundle. These are games that can be beat in around an hour or maybe less. It's a typical beat 'em up, arcade games that they're challenging and hard in their own ways. But now that there's the PS4 version, obviously you have unlimited coins to continue the game, and yeah, they're very fun. I've actually never played Battle Circuit before, so I was actually excited and had a lot of fun playing that game. The next game I beat was my favorite game of 2020, The Last of Us Part 2. This is a PS4 game, but I played this on the PS5, taking advantage of some of the performance improvements. I have an impressions video on this, but this was definitely my favorite game of 2020. Took me around 30 hours to complete the game, and it was just a very enjoyable experience. AAA budget, Hollywood-esque, presentation with insane graphics and cinematic sequences and scenes. I enjoyed the story. The gameplay was also pretty good. Soundtrack. The Last of Us Part 2 is just an outstanding game, and a must play if you guys have a PS4 or a PS5 system. I think I'm up to number 15 now. The King of Dragons, also part of the Capcom beat 'em up bundle. Again, this is one game that it's a very enjoyable beat 'em up with medieval themes and whatnot, and it can be beat in under an hour. So this is another of the short games that I managed to beat during 2021. Next up is Sly Cooper and the Thievius Raccoonus. I think hopefully I'm pronouncing that right, but it's also known as Sly 1, the first Sly Cooper game. Obviously, this is the remastered version that came out on the PlayStation 3. Yeah, I had a lot of fun playing this game. I also have an impressions video. You guys know me. I love my 3D platformers, and yeah, this was an enjoyable game. It took me around 8 hours, and I had a very pleasant time playing the first Sly Cooper game, and looking forward to playing the other 2 games in the trilogy that are part of that Sly Cooper collection. So probably in 2022, I'll set my goal to beat at least one more Sly Cooper game in the course of the year. At number 17, Ori and the Will of the Wisps on the Xbox One Series S. This was a fantastic game. It took me around 17 hours to beat the game because I like doing as much side content as possible. And this is another outstanding game, the sequel to Ori and the Blind Forest, which is one of my favorite Metroidvania games of all time. And Ori and the Will of the Wisps doesn't disappoint. It just picks up in the level of quality of the previous game. It has some different gameplay components and mechanics, but overall, this is a masterpiece. The graphics are just out of this world. Looks like an animated film. And cannot give enough praise to Moon Studios for creating such a fantastic game. And definitely, if you guys enjoy the Metroidvania genre, and if you have an Xbox One, this is on Game Pass, so make sure you don't sleep over the Ori games. At number 18, a game that I do want to make an impressions video. I beat this obviously very early in the year, and that game is Tell Me Why from Donnod. I'm a fairly big fan of the Life is Strange games. I beat the first one and then Before the Storm. So I still have to play the second one. But yeah, Tell Me Why did not impress me as much as I was hoping. I did not really enjoy the characters nor the story as much as I thought I would. The game took me around 12 hours to beat. And yeah, I'll probably see if I can set some time aside to do a very short impressions video, because I like to document all the games I beat by making an impressions video. So I'll probably do one on Tell Me Why, but it was not very impressive, and it's probably my least favorite adventure telltale type game that Donnod did recently. Next up, we have New Super Lucky's Tale on the Xbox One via Game Pass. Played this on the Series S. Fantastic game. It was a very pleasant surprise. Took me around 9 hours to beat, but a much improved game over the first Lucky's Tale. This game features side-scrolling levels. Some levels are kind of like 3D free roaming. So a lot of different variation in the levels. Just a charming mascot with Lucky. And the controls are pretty good, so highly recommend it if you guys are into platformers. New Super Lucky's Tale. was a fantastic game to play on the Xbox One Series S via Game Pass. Next up, we have Bloodstained: Curse of the Moon. I played this also through the Xbox One Series S. It took me only around 3 hours. It's a shorter game. People label this as an Igavania game because of of the person that worked in this game, also worked in the Castlevania games. And I really enjoyed this. It's an NES themed, retro graphics, 8-bit types of graphics. But I really enjoyed the gameplay of classic Metroidvania components and elements. I like the fact that you can switch characters, as you progress through the levels to have different forms of attack and progression. So yeah, highly impressed by Bloodstained: Curse of the Moon, and looking forward to playing more games in the series. At number 21, a classic JRPG remade into a modern version, and we're talking about Final Fantasy VII, the remake. This is part 1, obviously. Took me around 35 hours to complete. This is the PlayStation 4 version, but I did play it on the PS5. It was a very enjoyable experience. The only downside is, that obviously I did not play the original one, so I'm now waiting for part 2, which, who knows when that's going to come out. But I can safely say that, at least for part 1, I really enjoyed the characters, the story, and the action-based combat system, which is very different from the original one. But I enjoyed the game. I thought it was a solid, JRPG experience, and definitely looking forward to the upcoming parts and for this game. At number 22, we have Team Sonic Racing for the PS4. This game, unfortunately, it's one of my least favorite Sonic, racing games. I think the All-Stars Transform games are much better than this one. This one took me around 9 hours to beat the story mode, the single player mode. A little bit of a disappointment, to be quite honest. The game is enjoyable, but I did not enjoy some of the, team mechanics that the game introduced. But other than that, it's a fairly decent game, but it kind of dragged a little bit too long in terms of the single player mode for me personally. Next up is A Short Hike, which is an indie adventure exploration game on Steam. Fairly short. You can beat the game in under 3 hours. But it was a very pleasant experience. This is a game that has overwhelmingly positive reviews from people that have played the game. And can't complain about A Short Hike. It was a very pleasant experience. You hike a mountain, you meet different people along the way. Very relaxing experience. Highly recommended if you guys are looking for a short palate cleanser, a game in between, longer games. A Short Hike is the perfect game. Next up, we have a game that every now and then shows up on my completed list, and that game is Battlefield 3 for the Xbox 360. I played this through Game Pass. Game Pass has all the EA games. And it's a recurring game, I play this game every year, the multiplayer. So I invested maybe, I want to say, around 15 hours in 2021 playing this game, which is quite a bit for such an older first-person shooter. But I have to admit, I love Battlefield 3. The servers are still up and running, for whatever reason. But it's a game that I play every year, and I put 15 hours, which is a ton. So always enjoyed playing Battlefield 3 with what's left of the Battlefield 3 community out there. At number 25, we have Resident Evil 3, the remake on the PS4. This is a fairly short game, but it took me around 7 hours on my first playthrough. Took my time with it, and I really enjoyed the game. I think a lot of people complain about how short the game was, but I truly enjoyed it. The original one was fairly short to begin with. And the game is very solid, very well set up. Nemesis, it's not as maybe scary as we all were hoping in terms of chasing you throughout the whole game, but nevertheless, I think Resident Evil 3, the remake, is a very, very solid game. At number 26, we have Rise of the Tomb Raider, the 20-year celebration for the PS4. Also played this on the PS5. I put around 11 hours to play to complete this game. You can't go wrong with the Tomb Raider games. You know, it's basically very similar to the Uncharted games, but they do offer a little bit of more of a open world element that I really enjoy about them. You know, with the side missions and whatnot. So definitely looking forward to playing Shadow of the Tomb Raider soon. You know, to close out that Lara Croft modern trilogy. And it was a very fun adventure game experience for me. At number 27, every now and then, you know, you have to pay respect to the, to your elders, and this is Super Mario Brothers on the NES via the Nintendo Switch online service. Again, you know, every now and then you have to pay respect to those games that, you know, influenced everything. And Super Mario Brothers is the first one on the NES. You can beat this game in under 2 hours. And I took my time to beat every stage without taking any shortcuts. So I did play every single stage, you know, from start to finish. And again, you know, it's one of those games that it's always fun to revisit every few years, and glad I did. At number 28, we have Super Mario 3D World for the Nintendo Switch. I want to make a separate impressions video on this. I'm trying to complete Bowser's Fury before I do that. That way I can do a 2-in-1. Super Mario 3D World back in 2013 for the Wii U was my favorite game of that year. Super Mario 3D World for the Switch, unfortunately, I don't want to use the word ruined, but the turbo boost that they added really breaks the game, in my opinion. So I'm not a big fan of this particular version of the game, but nevertheless, 3D World is a very solid 3D Mario platformer, and it's a really good time. You know, if you don't have a Wii U, this is the way to go, obviously. At number 29, a game that I really want to make an impressions video. I've been sleeping on it because I beat this game like a couple months ago, and I really do want to make a review video, and that game is Shadowrun Returns. I played these on Steam. Obviously, this is a CRPG that it's a classic one. You know, it took me around 22 hours, and it has components of tactical, RPG components, turn-based, your class and character selection. Fairly solid story, and it's just an overall success story, you know, for a game that was kickstarted, you know, back in 2013. I think this is one of the most respected CRPGs that are out there, and I really enjoy Shadowrun Returns, and I'm looking forward to playing the other 2 games in the trilogy for the PC. At number 30, we have Teacup. This was an indie game, very short game. Suited for like younger audiences. You know, I played this with my younger niece, and it was a very fun time. You can beat the game in around 2 hours, and the game has a very unique art style and direction. And highly recommend it if you guys want to play this with with the younger ones, younger audience. It's a very good game that it's just a overall fun time. At number 31, Street Fighter 2 Turbo on the Super Nintendo via the Steam RetroArch extension. So just testing the waters for the upcoming Steam Deck. RetroArch has a new extension for Steam, so what better way to test it out than by playing a classic. I beat the arcade mode with both Ken and Honda, which are my favorite 2 characters of that game. So yeah, Street Fighter 2 Turbo, you can never go wrong. It's a classic and one of my favorite Super Nintendo games. So pretty glad I was able to revisit that game after so many years. For number 32, we have The Horror of Salazar's House. This is also a game that I have an impressions video on. This was out for Steam, and it took me around 3 hours. I played this during the month of October for Halloween purposes. It's a horror indie game that has a very unique art style and art direction. Fairly effective. It's not gonna blow you away, but it's a very interesting indie game that if you guys are into horror games, I think it's worth a try because of the low entry point of the cost of the game. Number 33, one of my most played games of the year, and that game is NHL 21 via Game Pass on the Xbox One Series S. I played the season mode without simulating any games. So I played a full season with, of course, my Tampa Bay Lightning. It's very refreshing having the best team in the game. I'm here from in the Tampa area, so can't call me a bandwagoner, guys. So very fun playing with the with the Tampa Bay Bolts, and it took me a while, around 20 hours to complete the season, but always a fun time. At number 34, and continuing with the October month, Halloween celebration, we have The Evil Within, as a game that I kept putting off. I really wanted to play this because of all the influences, Shin Mikami, and just a heavy Capcom / Resident Evil 4 influence on this game. So I played this on the PS5, or it's obviously the PS4 version. It's a fairly lengthy horror game. It took me around 16 hours, and I had a pretty good time with The Evil Within. I think there are some components that are somewhat dated by this point, but overall it was a very fun and very, very scary horror game. The game has some really grotesque sections and the depictions of violence, but overall I think The Evil Within is a very, very excellent game to spend the Halloween month, and I'm glad I did. Next up we have Tori 3D on Steam, another short indie 3D platformer. I highly recommend that you guys play this if you are into 3D platformers. I think the game you can buy the game for under $1, but this game is surprisingly good in terms of the controls and the physics. This game focuses on the player revisiting the same levels for speed runs, and let me tell you, it's just a very, very fun indie 3D platformer that's worth a shot considering the low entry price point. Next up we have Cruisin' Blast on the Nintendo Switch, an arcade racing game that really I got it on day one, and it's just a fun time. It's very easy to pick up and play, and I just love the Cruisin' series and how ridiculous it is. You play with in this particular game, you can play as a helicopter or a dinosaur or a sports car. This game is all over the place in terms of silliness, and I love it. And I'm really glad that the series got another game on the Switch, and I think the game is doing really good. I think most people that have played the game enjoyed it, and that definitely brings a smile to my face, because I really enjoyed the Cruisin' series and games. 37, another Halloween game that I played, Murder House. This is another indie horror game that it's really bizarre. It's a fairly short game. It took me, I want to say, less than 4 hours to beat the game. This is an ode to like older PS1 games with fixed camera angles. So very enjoyable game, but very gory and very difficult to figure out what to do. But it was a very enjoyable game for sure. Next up, I think I'm up to number 39 at this point, and we have the Forgotten City via Game Pass on the Xbox Series S. This is one of my favorite 2021 releases. I feel bad for playing this for free on Game Pass. This is a adventure mystery game that sets you back all the way to the Roman Empire, history point. I have an impressions video on this, but let me just say that if you guys have Game Pass, just please make sure to give this game a try, because it's a fantastic game. There's multiple endings, and it has a loop mechanic that is very well implemented. The writing is excellent. The characters, the setting, everything about this game is very impressive considering it's an indie game. So The Forgotten City, definitely one of my favorite games of 2021. At number 40, we have Scarlet Nexus. I played this via Game Pass on the Xbox Series S. This is on my queue list of impressions videos, so I definitely want to record one pretty soon. But it was a fairly solid JRPG, nothing too mind-blowing. I think the game has a really solid art direction and gameplay mechanics. It's a very fun, I guess, action-based combat system. Really enjoyed the characters, the art direction, but there was something missing about the game that didn't really make me be extremely impressed with it. But I'll go into more depth in my upcoming impressions video. Hopefully I can record one soon for this game. But overall, Scarlet Nexus is a solid JRPG. It took me around 25 hours. I only did one route with Kasane. There's two characters, and from what I understand, the second character, like if you replay the game and beat the game again, it's not a whole lot of different. So I think once is enough for me, and enjoyed my time with it. At number 41, an arcade game, Transformers Shadows Rising. We had an event from the company that I work for. It was a social event, and we went to an arcade place. And yeah, play this arcade co-op game. It took around 40 minutes maybe. I think it has 3 stages plus the final one. So yeah, saw the credits roll for Transformer Shadows Rising, and it's a fairly decent, on-rails shooter with a lot of, impressive sound effects and whatnot. But yeah, had to include that because I saw the credits roll, and even though it's a fairly short game, yeah, Transformers Shadows Rising for the arcades. At number 42, one of the most impressive indie games released in 2021, in my opinion, Wildermyth, another game that I want to record an impressions video fairly soon. I played this on Steam. Took me around 9 hours to beat a couple of the campaigns. This is a game that has a bunch of campaigns that keep getting released, but overall this is a game that you can sink tons of hours. It has a lot of different elements, ranging from strategy, RPG elements, to character development. The game is similar to XCOM, in terms of the strategy involved, turn-based combat, and just an overall fun and very surprising indie game that's worth a shot if you guys are into tactical RPGs. At number 43, we have Ghost of Tsushima Director's Cut on the PS5. I just beat this game recently. It was a fantastic experience. I do plan on making a separate impressions video on this, but let me just say this is a classic AAA, title from Sony, a Sony exclusive that. It just has a very tight gameplay, a very good story and characters, and the graphics just left my jaw, dropping for most of the game. Especially playing this on the PS5 with all the improvements. This game was just eye candy from start to finish. So excited to record an impressions video on this in the near future. But yeah, Ghost of Tsushima, the Director's Cut, a fantastic game on the PS5 that includes all the DLC and whatnot. At number 44, we have Glass Masquerade on Steam. It's a very relaxing, glass piece puzzle game with very, very trippy graphics and colors and very relaxing music. Highly recommend it if you guys are into puzzle games, but you just want to relax. This is the perfect game to play while you're doing other things. Had a lot of fun with Glass Masquerade. It took me around 7 hours to complete all the puzzles, but there's more that you can download via DLC, and I think I might do that because I really had a good time playing and relaxing through Glass Masquerade on Steam. And last but not least, it's hard to quantify some games in terms of if you completed them or not, but I decided to put Splitgate on my list. Played this on Steam, and I played all the game modes. Obviously this is a free online multiplayer game. It's a free-to-play first-person shooter that combines elements for think about mixing elements from Portal and the Halo franchises. And this game just has a very interesting gameplay mechanic, combining the Portal and Halo elements. And yeah, put a lot of time into this game, play all of the different game modes and so forth. So based on the time I put on this game, I decided to include it here. Very, very addicting, free-to-play first-person shooter. So make sure you try it. I think it's out for literally every system under the sun. So yeah, a very pleasant surprise for being a free game. But yeah, that's it, guys. That's my the games I beat during 2021. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. I do plan on making a separate my top games of 2021. I do need a couple months probably to play some of the 2021 games that I picked up during Black Friday. Obviously, you know, I need a little bit more time to play some of those releases, but I do plan on making that video. That's another annual release that I do every year on my channel. But yeah, that'll be out in the near future, covering my top games of 2021. But yeah, that's it for now. Hopefully you guys enjoyed my the games that I beat during 2021. Thank you for watching, and I will see you all later. Take it easy.